There's been a steady increase in Ukraine using armed drones to actually attack targets deep inside Russia, not just across in Crimea. The latest attack was using a UJ-22. I hope we've got a picture of it in a moment. About 500-mile range. It's quite relatively small. You can see from the scale of the guy next to it. 500-mile range, about 100 miles an hour. It only carries a 20-kilogram warhead. The latest attack, though, this came down at Koloma. It was only about 50 miles southeast of Moscow, and it came literally meters away from a Gazprom gas distribution centre in Russia. Now, we don't know what the actual target was, but tactically, relatively insignificant because it hasn't done very much damage at all. But strategically, it's really important because it takes the fight to Russia, but also makes it very difficult for the Kremlin's messaging. And actually, this is not the first time this sort of thing's been used. I take you back to 1942. It's called the Doolittle raids. And what happened was Japan had attacked the American fleet at Pearl Harbor, and Tokyo thought it was immune from attack too far away. The Americans stripped out these Mitchell bombers, drove their carrier as fast as it could. These things fell off the end on a one-way mission to Tokyo and managed to then bomb Tokyo, and then all either crashed or departed. Again, tactically insignificant, but strategically it reminded Tokyo it was in a war, and it was really good for the morale of the Americans. That's exactly what Ukraine's trying to do with its drone attacks against Russia at the moment.
OK, let's talk about supplies. There's so much talk about the West supplying Ukraine with what it needs, but it sounds like Russia are having their own struggles getting supplies in time to mount this next stage of the war.
A good example of that is the Russian drone attacks. We were reporting some time ago these Shahed 136 drones provided by Iran were regularly on a nightly basis attacking. These attacks resumed on the 26th, 27th of February, but there hadn't been an attack since the 15th of February. And I'm pretty confident most military analysts, if Putin had got these, he would be using them. So the fact is they're just running in short supply. Another illustration is that the tanks, by all accounts, Russia has lost about 2/3 of its available battle tanks. It's losing them at about 150 tanks every month. The T-80, the only production facility in Russia able to produce these, can produce 20 of them a month, 10% of the need. So it isn't just that Russia can produce lots of soldiers, lots of artillery, but when it comes to specialist equipment, it's not just Ukraine that's struggling. Russia is as well.
Well, they've got what they've got, and they're doing what they can with it. Can we talk about what's actually happening on the ground at the moment? Because the fighting does continue with what supplies are available.
It does, and for 6 months we've been talking about the fighting around Bakhmut here, but also around Volodar and further to the north. Over the last 24 hours, there have been 85 attacks around Bakhmut and Volodar, so it's very intense fighting. But what's really interesting, I think, from an analyst's perspective, if this really is the Russian offensive, desperately keen to hit Ukraine before the West's weapons arrive and the tanks arrive, it's not making very significant progress at all. And when, not if, this Russian military offensive stalls, when they culminate and the Russians are battle-weary, that will make them incredibly vulnerable to any forthcoming Ukrainian counterattack, hopefully early to mid-spring.